Hey guys, my name is Johnny, and I am here with a very interesting story from a founder. A lot of ups, a lot of downs, and someone who dares to try to kind of reach for the stars. I think you'll be really inspired by the story, and you'll learn from my friend Kyle, who is a very humble, very bold, and very audacious person. Loves philosophy and is very friendly to the Christian faith. And he built a site called Moshe, and we're going to learn a little bit about his journey and his path of both building a product, being in tech, and even his faith as part of this journey. So, without further ado, let's go and add Kyle in here. Hey, Kyle, how are you doing?
Hey, Johnny, thanks for having me.
Yeah, happy to have you. We've known each other, I think, for since the middle of last year, in a kind of a intense way. We met through the YC co-founder matching platform,
Yeah.
and almost instantly we took off in
Yeah.
in both angles, in tech and in philosophy, which is kind of an interesting path. But today we're here probably to discuss a very emotional, very long, and very intense part of your business, your startup, which impacted both you as a person. It defines you as a person, and also reveals your passion for how you approach products, right?
Yeah, I think so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so why don't you go ahead, introduce yourself, give the audience a little bit of a background of who you are, and then we'll get started.
Yeah, so I guess I'm a person who's always been driven by curiosity to understand learning and conversation and how people think about problems and come up with answers to them. Like, I spend a lot of my time trying to understand, how we use language and how we make models to try to understand the truth. And to communicate with each other about the ideas that we hold, and why we change our ideas or don't change them. And so I've sort of just been on this really long journey of trying to think about thought, and it exploded for me at a time where my wife's family is entirely Catholic, and so a couple people a couple family members and friends who are Catholic and family members who are Protestant had recommended that I read a book by G.K. Chesterton called Orthodoxy. So I started reading Orthodoxy very intensely because it's a challenging book to understand when you start out reading Chesterton. I'd never read anything before, and so it took a lot of work. It took a lot of work for me to try to understand what he was saying in that book. And I was writing essays on every chapter, and I kind of had gone through all of these simultaneous, massively life-transforming events where things that I thought were going to be my future weren't going to be, and it was kind of a wild time.
Mm-hmm.
And reading Chesterton set me on this path where I studied late 1800s and early 1900s philosophers and logicians and mathematicians, because I realized that if you don't understand who he's talking about, and artists as well, like poets and novelists too, if you don't understand who he's talking about, it makes it a lot harder to understand what he's saying. So I had to actually learn a lot about the sort of materialist European intellectual scene at that time. And long story short, the impact that it had on me was that I came to believe, because of the way that Chesterton thinks about problems, that the internet is a fascinating place where we can do a lot of really interesting work to try to come to truth. Mm-hmm. And I thought that it's very young. I was like, wow, this is very new. And I'm actually not much of I'm not technical or I wasn't technical at all. I'm still not really, but maybe I know a tiny bit, but like, I didn't even use any apps or websites. Like, I didn't know how to use Instagram or Twitter when I started Moshe. I literally didn't know how to use them. I had to go on Instagram and I was like, what is this? Like, what am I supposed to do here? Like, what are people doing here? I didn't understand it at all. Because I'd only ever had Facebook. So I was very not in that world. But because of reading Chesterton, I came to believe that there could be something built online where people are using communication, where we could come to much more profound understanding than what's currently happening. And I decided to take a shot at it. And I chose movies as the subject because movies are stories. I love movies. I love story. And I thought, well, if I can make an app all about movies and discussing movies, If I can solve that problem, then it should probably also solve the problems of other fields because they're all story. So that's sort of where I came from.
Which is a good segue. By the way, I love what you're saying about approaching it from that top-down model of how the world is supposed to be, especially with someone who is a powerhouse like Chesterton, and then coming all the way down into language, and then coming all the way down to a tech product. Most of the people listening might have only heard that, you essentially go to market, you test feedback, and then you build based on that feedback. But that very philosophical approach to building products is actually something that's very Christian in some sense, because God designed us to create order after who He is. It's the teleology, right, of the universe is what we model in what God has put inside of us. So that's actually very interesting. Now, I wanted to ask your 30-second pitch. What is Moshe Boga for the audience?
Well, what I ended up actually making is I basically made a sort of universal TV guide to all your streaming services, where you can see what's on all your streaming services, and you can see what your friends are recommending on them, what they're rating and recommending on them. And they can even make lists and write reviews, and it actually matches you to people based on the similarity of what you like and the quantity of what the same things you like are. So I'd show you that you're a 95% match with, Johnny on 100 movies and shows, and that would indicate to you that you probably have similar tastes. So if you see that he recommended something, it makes it easier to pick that you're going to watch this on Netflix later tonight.
Yeah, and so it's a movie matching product that allows you to find movies based on the interest that you have with other people. So it essentially matches. It learns about what other people like, learns about what you like, and then matches movies that you think that both people would essentially prefer. Am I understanding that correctly?
Yeah, and it's entirely human focused. So, I don't like Moshe Boga wasn't designed to push anything on anyone. It's just designed to make it so that you find the people who like what you like and you see what they're recommending and what they're saying about what's coming out. And the idea is sort of that people function as a simulation of one another. If you and I like 95% of the same things, then you're a very good model for me. And it's interesting because that's kind of as far as the philosophy aspect really went. I sort of got derailed. I spent a lot of time thinking about how much I didn't like the nature of text in reviews, that it's just this linear text that you go, oh, cool, and you could like thumbs up it. I was like, this is exactly, I went into making it and sort of ended up just making the same things that already exist.
Interesting. So something that's always interesting when a person is trying to build a product is that stage that goes from the idea to deciding to execute, right? That's a huge step that people kind of get stuck on. How is that process like for you? So you're coming from this very philosophical angle, right? You're reasoning your way down, and then you have an idea to think about text in movies. But what was that process like to say, I am going to now decide to execute on this idea at this point?
Patience has never been one of my virtues, and I'm trying to make up for that now. Because the thing is I sort of rush in blind. I'm sort of just jump into the deep end, even if I can't swim type of person. And I had spent a fair amount of time making mock-ups of a site, and I sort of became entranced, I think, by the idea of it all, that I was making a thing, and lost focus of the mission that had actually inspired all of this. Like, I had a mission, and I totally fell off the rails and ended up making something that sort of was more obvious and less original than I wish it had been, and was less profound and not really special to people. And I think that part of that was that I didn't spend enough time going slow and meditating on the issues. If I had sort of given more time for the novelty of it to wear off, I think novelty kind of, fed into the distraction of it. And if I had given more time for the novelty to wear off, I'm curious if I would have done redesigns before building. So I think that, I went in fast, and I found a dev shop where the guy that I talked to on the phone was nice to me, and he was Christian. And I thought, this is great. I'm going to just settle here. And they encouraged me to meditate on it a lot. I mean, they told me, listen, you should, before we do anything, you should be making, make your visual, make it, try to refine this and really make it very, very detailed and descriptive, so that you really see the whole thing. And they had spent quite a few months with me actually while I worked on those things. Which is what's interesting to me is that maybe I should have spent some years working on it, not months. I should have spent years working on it. So I'm kind of curious. It was an art project. It was. I did not go in with a business mentality. I went in with an art project mentality, and so I should have had a lot more patience and taken a lot more time, I think, to allow that novelty to wear off. Because if you're getting into tech for art, not business, it's totally different.
There's a very famous quote of a medieval queen, and she was getting dressed, and she said to her tailor, "I'm very limited on time. Please go slow." And that kind of goes into, what we normally think is go fast, but no, I want it done right, and I want it done well. So go slow and think about the process of doing it, which is actually a little bit contrary to what you might hear in the startup world. In the startup world, everyone is the hare, right? Everyone is constantly looking for a wave to hit, and they want to be able to essentially ride that wave. And that's why we see massive marketing campaigns and things like that. But it's actually kind of interesting that you're saying that part of what you would wish you would have done earlier was go slower, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's interesting. So from that idea stage, you come to decide on it. You say, okay, this is interesting. I want to pursue this. The dev shop, that's a tale as old as time. Talk to me about what motivated you to say, to pursue the dev shop perspective. Did you look into anything about building tech products at all, or did you just kind of start approaching shops to be able to build your app?
I think it ties in with the story of the hare, like you said. I think I thought that working with a dev shop would be fast and easier, and it wasn't. It's an interesting thing. When you watch videos from Y Combinator, for example, they talk about it. It turns out that I'm sort of a cliche in a lot of ways. Everything that I did was actually very cliche, and I didn't know and understand the example that others have already gone through everything. And they talk about a founder going to a dev shop being a bad idea. What's interesting is that it's not necessarily actually because dev shops can't build it. That's not the case. It's not that a dev shop can't build it. I think actually what it is that a founder who goes to a dev shop, there's almost sort of a self-selection process there, where if you are the kind of person where you do that, it sort of correlates heavily with someone who is being impatient, not diligent, and doesn't really have full understanding and an ability to lead a team and develop a product and bring it to market. Because if you could do all of those things, you would already have a network of people that you would be building it with who would trust you and who would go with you. And so it's sort of a funny thing where it's not really about dev shop or no dev shop. It's that the kind of developer, the kind of founder who does that is the wrong kind of founder. And that's the problem. It's that you're not ready. And we know that because of the actions. So that's sort of an interesting thing. You can rationalize that it's a good idea, but it's not, because the truth is that you as a founder don't know what you're getting yourself into, and you don't have the ability to actually bring it to success, because it takes a lot of experience.
Yes.
And you already have channels.
And there's probably a ton of founders here, and they're probably watching this and thinking, this recurring theme of patience coming up, right? And this recurring theme of, think more about the thing you're building and be more meticulous. And obviously they might be young, or it's their first time building a company, and they might be thinking to themselves, well, I have this great idea, and I think it would be amazing, if we just had the right amount of users, or if we just did the right things, if we just built the product, it would just blow off, and I see the potential over there. How would you be able to say, now that you've gone through some of this, distinguish between the right pace, like the distinguish between going maybe too slow and you're thinking too much, because that's also a temptation, staying on the idea, versus not being meticulous? How would you balance those two things?
Yeah. So before, I had told myself that I was building to learn, that the only way that I could really learn is by building. So the building and the failing process is part of the learning. Mm-hmm. And that is true. I think that is true. But the problem is that I didn't actually learn how to build while I was failing. And that's why it turns out that even though I was the hare, I was actually losing the race, because I went fast into something where I hit a personal wall, mm-hmm. and ended up having to start over right back at the starting line. Mm-hmm. So when I think about younger people, and I think about the go fast and sort of break things, it's like Well, I think that is actually true because I do think that you have to see something before you can move on from it, but you have to actually have the ability to not run out of runway by exhausting yourself and your resources, your financial situation.
Mm-hmm.
You have to basically, like, as of right now, anybody should be able to build prototypes for free or almost nothing using no code app builders and now AI technologies like Replit. So
Yes.
the game has completely changed from when I started trying to make Moshiboga 4 years ago, or 5 years ago. The game has completely changed. So there's really no excuse now for making the wrong choice. Like if you're wanting to start a technology project, you should be building it yourself, and you should be spending nothing or almost nothing doing it.
Okay. I agree 100%. I think that, especially a lot of people who are, training their kids up, especially with classical Christian or those kinds of programs, they emphasize logic and rationale. And I actually think everyone should learn to code, right? Because I think that that's going to become a fundamental skill in the future. Even with AI technology, it's always helpful to learn how the computer thinks, because the computer is the most powerful tool that you have, right? Out of all the tools that you have in your house, the computer is the most powerful tool that you have, and it is an extension of your brain, right? It doesn't replace your brain, but it is an extension of your brain. You should learn how to use that. There's two places that I'd like to go here. One, and we'll start probably with this because I think it's more relevant for a founder, which is this notion of the YC tar pit ideas. Now, would you say that movie app that's social, right? Would you consider that as a tar pit idea now that you've invested into this domain? What would you think?
Yeah, I think that it probably is. I think that
Yeah.
What kind of gets me about it is I do still feel like there's something coming because of how the way that we engage with movies and shows is still oddly dissimilar than how we engage with everything else. And that's something that I like wonder about often. Like there seems to me that it seems to me that sometime in the next 10 years we're going to see some transformation in how people are discovering movies and shows and watching them. When I try to think about what it is, I don't know. I just know that what I did was definitely tar pit. And Letterboxd already exists, and it turns out that, matching people with each other, which there's posts on the internet with thousands of likes where people say, wow, I really wish Letterboxd would make a matching so that we could see what our match is with other people. And they haven't done it. And then, I can say, hey, I have it. And they go, well, everybody's already on Letterboxd. So, it's not really that important. But it is interesting to me that people would say things like, Letterboxd has already peaked. It's maxed out. Like they've got the only market they're going to get that there is. They say, some people hated it when I told them about Moshiboga, and they would say, like, one guy said something to another guy, said, oh, it's another Letterboxd. And I was like, what? And I was like, it's not another Letterboxd. I have a different rating system and I match people with each other. And I'm like, okay, that's not even close to different enough. But like what kind of gets me is that some people would say things like, I wish this would help me watch movies with people. And that made me wonder. After a while, I started wondering about the VR headsets and watching movies with people on headsets. And I sort of looked into that and saw that Apple and Meta have been having a hard time selling those headsets, and it's not taking like they had anticipated. And it actually, when I thought about that, I kind of wondered if someday we would all actually be wearing headsets watching movies, because I could be next to my friend who lives on the other side of the country. And there's shows and movies that I won't watch by myself, and I'm not going to watch them with my wife, but I would watch them with that one friend who lives on the other side of the country. And that's interesting, because what people actually watch is different depending on who they watch it with. People watch different things by themselves than they do paired with other people. And that's another thing I did with Moshiboga, is I made it so that you could add other people and browse simultaneously to see what matches with all of you together. But that's
an interesting feature. So, there's quite a bit there really to unpack, because, I think of your average founder, and especially a person who is thinking about the problem and thinking about what it is that they're doing, and they hear all of this advice about, don't pursue this and don't pursue that, right? But they're obviously passionate about a particular field, right? I mean, I can't imagine you going into movies if you're not passionate about that. It's not the straightforward business opportunity as much as something else might be, but you're like, I really care about movies. I really care about solving problems within finding movies. Do you think that there are ways, especially for young founders, to work on ideas like social ideas in a better way? Now that you have the experience, is there a better execution model that you would say would be more relevant for young founders who are passionate about music or movies or something like that, and they want to build a potentially torpid idea?
It really, I think, is the case that if you can't find a group of friends who all want to use it together, it's dead. Like it's like it should be really quick. I invalidated Moshe Boga a long time before I even realized I was failing. Like a long time before.
That's a very interesting standard, by the way, because we don't think of social products as we think of social products almost in a different category. We think of them as, a very much of a, if you build it, they will come type of thing, and all I need to do is build it. But, you can very much invalidate social products very early on, like you're saying. But the very powerful thing that you kind of mentioned is that if people can't use it together early on, like very early on, then you've kind of lost this opportunity to produce value for them, right? Like there's not enough value for them to use it. Is that correct?
Yeah, and the temptation is to feature load. Like my thing was, okay, they're not using it because the buttons don't look cool enough, and because it doesn't show you this, and if I add this thing, then maybe that will do it. And it's just like, no, people just don't really care. Like, first of all, it's fascinating how seductive social products are to people. Like, why is it that we all want to make? Why is it that so many people and the tar pit ideas so abundantly are social ideas? What is that about? We would have to have like a whole nother episode just to talk about the psychology, maybe, of why.
100%. That's a worthwhile.
It's like, yeah, it's like it's like a huge thing. I don't know what it is exactly, but and that, by the way, that's a funny thing about TVs, is that in all of our houses we all have the biggest screen in our house is our TV, and it's the only screen that doesn't have a social product on it. Like, the only one. It's like we are all living on social, and there's one device in everybody's house that they spend time looking at that doesn't have anything social. And I'm like, I still wonder if I'm like, is Moshe Boga valid for like if Roku or Samsung built it? Like, what if like Apple TVs had it? But obviously they've already thought of this, and I'm sure they've done tons of research, and they were like, there's no way that the entire force of Roku hasn't already gone through this and then decided not to do it. I think, but it's a very interesting thing. There's something different about movies. I'm not sure what it is, but it's if you can't get a small group of friends right next to you to absolutely love using it together, then that should be pretty much the only information you need, and you should be able to build the MVP for free.
Yeah, by yourself. And that's a common recommendation that I think is posited by a lot of people, even from people building, probably from our side, which is more of a philosophical Christian angle. Even when we want to do good for the world, we should still take things to market and see what people say in the cheapest way possible. There are exceptions. I'm not saying that there isn't. Sometimes you just need to put in some more spruce before people can enjoy it, but you should be taking it to people and seeing what they're saying as far as their actions, right? Even if they say different words, even if they say encouraging words, they may not always follow through on their actions. So actions are the things that count, right?
Yeah, everybody said nice things. Lots of people said nice things. Like, oh, I'll make an account, I'll use it, and then they never did.
Right. But that's actually a good segue to my next question is, what was your customer acquisition, user acquisition like? So a lot of founders, once they kind of get that step of, I have an idea, I'm building the product, now I want to go get customers, they kind of get stuck. So what are some things that you tried to get users? Obviously you had users on the platform. What was that process like? What are things you tried?
I did get like 600 accounts or so, like 600 or 700, but only one of them ever came back often, and he really used it as a solo activity. He used it to like a diary to record his viewings and things like this and his reviews. But I did things like I went to movie theaters and I talked to people after they finished movies, and they would make accounts. I would give them like free movie tickets. Like I would give out free movie tickets to Regal Cinemas for people to make an account and review the movie they just seen. And they would talk to me about it, and I would see bugs. That's one way that I would like find bugs, is they would do things that I wasn't expecting, and I would discover bugs that way. But I did that. I did like trivia nights at like bars. I did like trivia nights. I would like sponsor like a trivia night with like free movie tickets as a giveaway. So I'd talk to those people and tell those people about it. Like friends, I did, a little bit of Facebook advertising where I would make Facebook ads, and I got, I actually did get a couple of users who, went and rated like 600 movies and then never came back. Like that was one thing that was interesting. One guy like rated 600 movies and wrote a review and, then never came back. And, I just did things like that. I was at a film festival here in Florida one time. I was like a super tiny sponsor. Like I just had like a nice little table. It was very generous. The film festival was very generous to let little sponsors in like me. And so I just had like a little table with tons of people came over, and I even had pages for all the movies in the film festival that hadn't been officially released yet. So people could go to those movie pages. And, that didn't even work. Like that's something that's interesting, is like these people who made films and are so desperate were like, well, this isn't going to be on IMDb though. And they're like, nah, and they didn't care immediately. Like it's sort of like the top dogs are the top dogs already, and it's pretty set in stone for them. And all the young people are just watching TikTok. So,
that's actually really insightful and interesting, because it looks like what you did was a lot of pounding the pavement and just trying to, go and get
college students.
Yeah, college students or
going to classes
where you would find your target customers, right, and your target users. And I think a lot of founders, and this is actually kind of interesting phenomenon, a lot of founders that I've even talked to never talk to users. They are just at odds, and they say, I'm bad at marketing, or I'm bad at this. But there is a general attitude of, you have to, at some point, right, take that theory and then go and pound the pavement or do whatever it takes to talk to someone about it, right? And it's uncomfortable, and it's not always pleasing when they give you negative feedback, right? Like they were talking about IMDb or Letterboxd. But nonetheless, that is where the rubber meets the road. So there's this very real thing. What would you kind of say to a founder or a person who's thinking about, any project? Doesn't have to be a startup. It could be, I'm writing a book, or I'm doing this. How, what would you say to that person about their, them feeling overwhelmed about trying to, talk to people? Because a lot of people just feel like they can't do it. There's an emotional block in the hearts of people to actually go in and getting feedback. They think of it as a little overwhelming. What would you say to that? Because you're very like, let's go hit the road kind of a person.
The number one thing is to meet people in their own space and not invade their space. Like sometimes I would go to things and sort of be aggressive, where I'm like really trying to, go talk to people, but they're not there to think about, products, and they're not like, there's a way to go about things where it feels more like natural and organic to be talking about your product. So it's like you like the film festival, for example. The film festival, lots of people were excited to come talk to me about it, and they liked that I had like little pamphlets for every movie with a QR code that would take you to that movie's page, so you could go make an account and vote for the movie and give it ratings. So it was an appropriate audience. It was a film. I met with a film club on a college campus, so they were excited because that's what they do, is they're a film club. I went to a class that was in the film department at a college, at a university, and presented it to the class. The teacher let me actually present it, so I had like a whole class session. So I was meeting, like, the best interactions I had. I was meeting people in a space where it made sense for them to be thinking about these things, and they like this class, for example, they were fourth year programmers, and they were also interested in film. So it was sort of like an arts software. It was like I'm not sure exactly how to describe the class, but like finding those spaces where it makes sense, it really works, and people are happy. People don't want to be bombarded with advertisements when they're trying to do something else. So just think about where your people would be, and sort of meet them in that space.
That's good. Now we're going to transition a little bit into the actual story of Moshe Boga in terms of what happened, right? So, you know, you are approaching this dev shop, right? And approximately how long were you working on Moshe Boga for?
I mean, so I had thought of Moshe Boga in 2014. I was basically in right after college, right after I graduated from college. I thought, it's really weird that people read movie reviews online, but we don't know if we're similar to the reviewer. Like, this is bizarre. Like, I would like to know if the reviewer likes the same things that I like, because if this person doesn't like the things I like, then their negative or positive review for another movie isn't really as relevant for me. And I spent like 2 months on like Codecademy trying to learn to code. And then I was like, I didn't study programming at all in college. And I was like, this is going to like take a team of talented people to make this. And I gave up. I was like, I coding on Codecademy, and I was like, I'm not going to make it. Like, I'm not going to be able to succeed in making this. And so I gave up, and I quit my job, and I moved to Maine and became a lobster fisherman. And like, that's like the real, like, that's what happened.
Yeah.
And then, 2020, things had happened, and I thought, okay, now I'm going to stop commercial fishing, because that's all I kept doing. I'm going to stop commercial fishing, and I'm going to try to make this. I'm going to try to make this movie idea I had, because all of the reading I had done, I was like, this is going to, this would be a good place. I was like, I want to learn how we learn. I want to learn how we learn, and I want to figure out, like, something is missing. I was like obsessed with this idea that like the truth is this giant painting, and we all just have puzzle pieces. Like, I was like, every single person is just carrying a puzzle piece of the painting, and the only way that we can get the painting is we have to figure out how we can get everybody's puzzle pieces, and we need to assemble those puzzle pieces. That was the imagery I had, and I was like, I'll do it with movies. If I do it with movies, because I had that cool idea 6 years ago that you can match people, and I was like, that'd be a great jumping point. If I make that, I bet people will like it. I assumed people would like it. I thought it was still a good idea. It might have been in 2014. It might have been a good idea in 2014, but it was not anymore in 2020. But I started, I started like mid 2020. I started trying to make mock-ups again.
So you approach the dev shop, right? And the dev shop is building, doing the product development of that. Walk me through kind of like your daily kind of routine, or your maybe weekly routine, whatever is more relevant. How that felt like during the time, perhaps in the middle of building the product. Like, what did it feel like at that point in your journey? Like, how did you interface with them? Anything, right?
We would do Zoom meetings, and I would make these like elaborate multi-page PDFs, like picture books, basically, like front-end mock-ups of it. And we would talk about them, and we would like talk about, we would like debate aspects of it, and talk about how difficult different things are and alternatives. And so it was a lot of it, like, I was in way over my head. Like, it was sort of like, it was a team of people who all worked together, and they were trying to help me figure out how to make something that would be really good and work. And it was difficult. It sort of makes me understand why I think Calendly was built with the dev shop. I think they're one of those anecdotes, is like Calendly. I'm not sure if I have the anecdote 100% correct, but I think it's like two women who actually both worked in tech for a long time before they founded Calendly.
I think they were project managers or something like that.
Okay, so they were experienced. They'd worked with people before, so they really had very good heads on their shoulders. And when I believe they hired a dev shop because they they really knew what they were doing, and they were ready to be project managers. I was essentially in the position of a project manager, but I had no business being there because I had no experience, and the only way that you can know anything is time, a lot of time and a lot of experience. You can't just be a smart person who rolls out of bed and thinks they're going to be really good at leading a team of people or making a project. That just doesn't make any sense.
Interesting. Yeah.
It was pretty chaotic. It was pretty chaotic of me changing my mind a lot and thinking of things and coming up with new ideas all the time and being like, oh, wouldn't this be cool if this was, if it was like this? And it's sort of just an endless idea fountain and feature loading. And you become you become entranced by your own product. Like
Yep.
it's sort of like the inspiration was philosophy. Like the truth is a mural, a massive mural. We all have puzzle pieces. How are we going to put those puzzle pieces together? That was the mission. The moment I started trying to make that movie website, I was lost. Like the moment that I started, that was lost.
It's actually an interesting point about having an idea, right, versus like having an idea in your head versus actually making it alive is a completely different process. And people, I think, often underestimate the width of the chasm that exists between the idea and the actual execution, right? Like they think it's so close because they can imagine it, but imagination to reality is, so far. And we're going to take a look at Moshe Boga here actually shortly. Before we do that, I do want to ask two things, which is one, when you work with a dev shop, were there any major challenges that you had to deal with, right? And two, kind of piggybacking off that, if there's a founder thinking about working with a dev shop, or perhaps feeling that, mode of being stuck, right? Either one, if you have any thoughts to share to them, that would also be helpful to hear. What would you do? What would you have done possibly slightly differently in your interaction with the dev shop, if there were any?
Okay, so first of all, if you try to work with a dev shop and you're thinking that it's going to go faster, you're doomed because you need to realize that they have lots of other projects and yours is not the most important one. So the number one thing is I was extremely anxious, impatient, and then I was waiting a lot. So it was waiting for their calendar to open up so that they can fit my thing in. And then when you want to change something or fix something, their calendar opens up in a couple months or a few months. So like if you think it's faster, it's not. You're going to be waiting, and then the waiting is painful. So it's an extremely painful process waiting, because for you it's everything, but this is their job, and they have a lot of other people that they're making things for, and so the anxiety and the impatience definitely primes you as a founder to also probably be more aggressive and maybe not as endearing when you do have face-to-face. And so then if they don't like you, now you're really in trouble. So I think that chemistry is really delicate. Having chemistry and like a culture in a work environment is a very fragile and very, it's very fragile and it's very important. And like if you're a young founder, if you're looking to start something, and you think, well, I'm not going to be able to learn all this stuff on my own, so I should go try to work with these people, like you're essentially gambling on top of a gamble. It's you're compounding the risk and the gamble.
And for those people that are kind of deciding, is there kind of a particular set of criteria or ideas that are good for dev shops, you would say? Is there a particular use case that you think as a founder, yeah, like for this idea or this thing, I would go for a dev shop?
I don't know enough to be able to say when it is a good idea. It's not that I don't think it is. It's just that I don't know enough. Like clearly experienced project managers would be able to tell. Experienced project managers, but I don't have a good foundation of experience and wisdom, and so I'm not even able to assess when it would be a good idea. I think maybe it would be a good idea only if you already have an MVP that has traction and is doing well, and you have plenty of funding, and they can start immediately and be fully dedicated.
Okay, so if money is not the problem,
yeah, but if that's the case, well, then you just hire somebody yourself. That's
right. Then it also goes, yeah, why not just hire an engineer at that point? And there are some people who have an idea and they have savings and they want to say, I want to build this product, I can go sell it. Can I go ahead and just hire someone? My one advice to people all the time is, hiring someone. There's no such thing as a fix. There's not like you just turn a key, you just put a key in and you turn it, or you just take a medicine and you fix it. Even if you hire someone, even if you hire a dev shop, they're just tools, right? They're essentially, you have to use them or guide them in the right direction. And even with the conversation about AI, same thing. It's a tool, but at the end of the day, you have to make sure that all the parts are aligned to what you want ultimately, and then for what the customer wants too. And that's actually a good transition to actually take a look at Moshiboga. So I know that Kyle's actually pulled up Moshiboga here. Kyle, you are okay. I'm going to add it to the stage real quick.
Mhm.
Okay, so we're going to walk through Moshiboga, take a look at some of the features, and then what Kyle is going to describe as the core value propositions of Moshiboga. So take it away.
Yeah. So basically, the core value proposition that I had was, oh, that's funny. Somebody wrote a review May 9th. It's basically, it matches you with other people, so you can go and find reviews and follow them if you want to. But you can find reviews by people who like what you like, and rather than being a star rating system, which I thought was too arbitrary, what is a 3-star, what is a 4-star? It's hard to say exactly what these things mean. I just wanted to go with a simple emoji system. So I went with like a simple emoji system where you could rate a movie just according to how it made you feel. You could, have like a nice movie page where you saw movie breakdowns. It shows you where it's available. It even launches the movies. Like if I just click Netflix here, it will just open this movie in Netflix on my computer, and I could start watching it. With the Just Watch API that I have integrated. It's got all the standard things you'd expect, like actor pages, these reviews, and people can make lists too. So sort of thought, it's fun to make lists. So favorite Christmas movies is a list that one user made. And so you can go through and you see your rating. So I can see that I already rated some of these movies, and then it shows you the rating of the person who made the list at the top. And you, without going to the page, you can launch it and see the play now here as well. And if you go to recommendations, then it's just going to show algorithm recommendations, which I've rated a lot of movies, and so not all of these are perfect right now, but they're usually pretty good. And you can see recommendations by people you follow. So that's another thing I did. Oh yeah, I did actually love. Yeah, this new Mufasa movie is very good. So I love that movie, and I can also say I'd rewatch it to let people know I'd watch it again, and I can actually just hit that I recommend it. So that was another thing, is that it's not only do we have that you can rate movies and shows, because it's got all shows too. It's that's one thing Letterboxd doesn't have, by the way, is they're only movies. They don't have shows, but still I wasn't able to convert not a single Letterboxd user. I wasn't able to convert any of them to use Moshiboga. So, basically I have this kind of more elaborate rating system, and also like a neat ability to add friends. So I have like this little group feature where I could go through and add, people, and it adds their little profile down here to show that 2 of us are connected. So it will actually show all of our ratings everywhere. So, you can anywhere that somebody rated, it's actually going to show all of the people that I've added to this. So I can see what we've all rated and not seen. So these 2 people both really loved The Wild Robot. This one recommended it, but this one just loved it. So basically that was the idea, is that you go through this and you can really see all of your friends at once, because you can add up to 5. You can add up to 5 people here. Look at what's on your streaming. You can, select your streaming services here. So you can edit your streaming services. So I've got all these streaming services. That way it will show me, all of them, what's available on all of them if I go here. So yeah, it's basically, that's it. It's a universal TV guide. I can just go here and keep up with everything in one place. And thought it would be cool if I could also put this on smart TVs, so you could actually like I made it so you can add movies to lists too. So I've got all these lists I made, and you can add movies to your watch list, and it will send you emails when they come to your streaming services. So if it's not available right now on one of your streaming services and you hit this, it'll send you an email when it comes to one of your streaming services. So I'll be like, oh, that movie I want to see just came to Netflix. Yeah, so that was like, yeah, that was a cool one. I still get reminders sometimes. Like I'll get an email that's like, hey, this movie you want to see is on Max now. And I'm like, oh, cool. So then I go and I'll watch that on Max or whatever. That was a neat one. And just the custom lists and stuff. Like I have a chat feature so you can like share reviews and movies and everything like with people inside it. But the chat was really unnecessary. And then, like filters, so you can filter according to genre and ratings and things like this. So it's just sort of like, the thing is, I still think it's actually pretty cool. I'm like, I still like it, but I don't really use it, and neither does anybody else. It just kind of is something that I think is cool, and Now it's time to turn it off, which I'm a little bit sad about. But yeah, and it tells you like high, medium, and low match. So,
Sure.
you can actually see the level of match you are with people. And here's my profile. I've rated over 1,000 movies, written 100 reviews, made 23 lists, recommended 144. It was a good time. It was I'm proud of what I made, except for the fact that it doesn't achieve the mission that I started, and it didn't win anybody over. So
Yeah, maybe. Were there any moments of headwinds that you did feel at any point? Like, did you ever feel like, oh, something is starting to happen at different points? Were there any indications of that?
I thought that once it worked, that would be a big deal, because for most of the time that I had Moshiboga, it crashed constantly and it took like 10 to 20 seconds to load. So I was like, nobody's going to use this if it doesn't work.
Mhm.
And then once it loaded quickly and didn't crash, still nobody came. And that's when I realized this was bad.
So, what was the process like ultimately, kind of deciding to close Moshiboga? What was that journey like for you?
A lot of resistance, ego gets in the way. Probably all the same things got in the way starting this whole thing, because I started out with this, mission that I thought was noble, and I didn't make it at all. There's nothing about Moshiboga that leads to greater and more profound understanding of the movies you're watching. I was like, okay, this is going to be writing as an exercise, because if you write, you do more reflection. It doesn't yield that result. If you want to write a thoughtful review, you can just do it in your iNotes on your phone. If you have an iPhone, you can just open up iNotes and write your diary entry there. So it just didn't do it at all.
Mm-hmm.
And then
a lot of emotions around.
So there's a lot of emotions. Not wanting to give up is this probably the same motivations as why it got derailed in the first place. Just being distracted by shiny things.
Okay, and that's probably very similar to anyone who's closed a company. Is that it really does feel, very. So emotional is not the right word, because it doesn't get the gravity of it. It feels like you're being torn apart to some extent, right? Because you invested a lot of your energy, time, money into this.
Yeah.
I've certainly closed a company before, a few of them actually, and it's never easy, right? What advice would you have for a young founder, particularly perhaps Christian? It doesn't have to be, but Christian who are maybe philosophically approaching it, right? What advice did you have for someone kind of building in a similar space? It could be either they're building into movies, either they're perhaps wanting to build something right into movies or something like that, or they want to build something social, right? Or they want to build a product that is social. What advice would you have for a young founder wanting to do that?
So one of the worst things that you can be if you're applying for funding or an incubator or anything is non-technical. Like if you're non-technical and you're trying to make a tech product,
mm-hmm.
It's not a good look. It's not a good look at all, for good reason. The other thing that's really bad is to be a solo founder. Mm-hmm. This is not the wild, wild west where you're just like a hero on a horse with a 6-shooter and you like get business done for some reason better than anybody else can. Like that, it's just like, I mean, maybe there's somebody like that. Like it's not me. It's like you need a partner. You need somebody who can mirror you to yourself so that you can see where you've gone off the rails and where things are gone off the rails. So like I found you because I finally was like, I didn't even know what Y Combinator was for like the first 3.5 years that I was doing. I found them on YouTube. Like the algorithm brought it to me when I was like clearly sad about my thing. It like knew and it was like, hey, here's one of these. And then they just like, rag on things. It's pretty funny. But it's like, I found you and you were like, Kyle, I'm going to try to help save you from yourself because like you're being confronted by reality. You're not acknowledging it. And another person's perspective is like medicine. You need to have it. And if you have an idea and you want to make it into a reality, I would recommend finding somebody who you think has, wisdom and, some emotional intelligence, probably, that's probably under the umbrella of wisdom, I guess. So you need to find somebody with wisdom and ideally, who's different than you, and will challenge you and tell you things are bad ideas, as like a peer, and that could be a co-founder or sort of like a spiritual co-founder. It could be a spiritual co-founder.
Yeah. So getting someone to help you in the journey is probably the number one thing you could do to safeguard yourself.
Yeah.
Right. Safeguard yourself and your company.
Yeah.
To be honest. So I know that we're kind of coming to the end of this. I'll kind of leave it up to you to kind of talk about what your next endeavors are, right? And any closing thoughts that you might have. What is the process like for you now that much progress in the past? What are you thinking about next? Are you thinking about doing another thing? And any other closing thoughts that you might have?
So I am doing another thing, and I'm telling myself it's an art project, but that might be some kind of delusion, because I do think that it is really good and will have a lot of value for people. I'll find out if I'm right, but I'm treating it as an art project so that even if I'm wrong, it still is, an accomplishment of my mission. It's called Tidbits, and it's basically what I set out to do, making something that actually helps people assemble truth. So that's basically it. It's, and I'm doing it for free. That's what I would recommend to anybody else to just do it. Figure out how you can do your thing for free and make your basic object.
Well, thank you, Kyle. This has been really helpful. And if you guys want to see more content like this, especially from Christian founders with a philosophical background, founders that are thinking about their companies for more than just profit, but they're thinking about the social impact, or think about what it means to build companies for humanity, right? And if you think that this kind of content is interesting and important, please go ahead and subscribe to the channel, right? If you like the video, go ahead and like it and share it to anyone that might find this interesting. And we're definitely going to have Kyle back over here again. He's going to be a big part of this channel. Thank you guys so much for watching this interview. Thank you, Kyle, so much for being part of this, and looking forward to the next episode, and looking forward to and good luck with all your future endeavors.
Thanks for having me, Johnny.
All right, bye.
Before I leave this world, I'll sing my truth, a final ode to my stolen youth. I'll paint the skies with my wildest dreams, and let my heart burst at the seams. Before I leave this world,